I think what we'll see then is that there'll be otherwise.
This time we'll call the meeting to order. Is there anyone to offer an invocation?
Yes, Pastor.
Let us pray. Our Lord, we give you thanks, first of all, for this community, the city of Concordia and the surrounding area. The blessings that we have in this community are unsurpassed, and we're grateful. We also lift up our city leaders, those here and those that work so hard in our community to make it all that it can be. We pray for its citizens, that each and every person that abides in our city limits might know your blessings and might follow you. We pray all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. We have added an executive session for discussion of confidential business information that I would like to have come at the normal spot at the end of the agenda.
That's what after staff comments. It's on the back of the page. Oh, pay attention.
At this time, move forward with the approval of minutes for the May 3rd, 2017 meeting.
I'll make a motion. We accept them as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Sacco and seconded by Commissioner Parker to approve the minutes of the May 3rd, 2017 meeting as presented. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to financial matters, appropriation ordinance number 9.
I have a question on check 64335, 31,489, 12 cameras, subscriptions.
Those are the police cameras there. They got, I think they got grant. No, that was a bunch of them.
They were encumbered, so they came out of last year's budget.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
So those are the new body cameras.
okay.
Yeah, that's.
And one other one, check 64369, $1,200. What's text system?
That's our new, we haven't started it yet, but we're gonna have a thing where people can sign up, get text alerts for, say, if the ball games are canceled, or there's emergency, maybe weather. The emergency managers can use it with the county, and all the departments can use it.
So we can notify a whole bunch of people with one text message, like ball games rained out, sign up and let them know.
Okay, city officials and stuff.
Yeah, well, no, general population.
Oh, general population
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you can be too if you sign up.
Yeah, we'll let you sign up.
Will you let me sign up?
Well, I think like the school system has a automatic
Yeah, that's
phone
right.
call type thing.
It's the same kind of thing.
Thank you.
This is gonna be text.
64354. We don't visit much. In fact, I've been here a while and talk about our security for our computer system.
We recently just kind of changed over and the kids Stacy, you're probably the most familiar. We talked about it.
So you're the expert that takes care of things, huh? Keeps us
I'm the
from.
one that has been delegated that, I guess.
Okay. Well, that's
Lack of
good.
Anybody wanting, well, we work with Kirby Fox, and he has gotten us new antivirus, and he monitors that. So I don't know if there's anything else.
Kirby's formerly with Computer Solutions. now he's at-
Okay.
Stacy,
Well, I
do
mean,
you
it
guys
sure
have
seems like it's a
firewall?
big deal elsewhere, and we never seem to talk about it, so it sounds like we're stay on top of things and
All
not
the-
hacked or.
No, and all the employees who have access to computers are doing monthly cyber training as well through Midwest Public Risk. It's free.
Good.
So
Good.
do we have a firewall then for, because you guys take like debit cards and credit cards?
We have cloud storage for a lot of our data.
Great.
Thanks.
Well, I'll move to approve appropriation ordinance number 9.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Parker and seconded by Commissioner Pounds to approve appropriation ordinance number 9. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. This time, we'd like to open the floor to anyone who'd like to make a public comment.
Hello.
Good evening.
Well, first and foremost, we are gearing up for our national celebration. And so this is our 15th annual, and it's our big year. We have our 10th anniversary for our museum, the 30th anniversary for our founding organization in Arkansas, and the 100th birthday of the UP Depot. So we wanted to personally invite you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley.
That's a great picture. Thanks.
And then also, the only thing that's missing off of that agenda is that we're having a charity auction, which is auctioning off artist-painted chairs from across the state of Kansas, and it's raising money for our Anna Laura Hill statue. We're about 3/4 the way there for funding. The 3/4 has come from grant money, and the total cost will be about $45,000 for the custom piece. So most of it will come from donations after that. We had pitched a statue, but unfortunately that one's not available. So I brought you a new alternative. The company put forth. There's two there. It's the same statue, but the difference is that one has a stone bench and one has the bronze bench, and you'll see the big difference in price. The good news with the stone bench is that it's locally made by Leduc Memorial, and you can put an engraving on it. And so we've had statues that are ordered both ways. I will say that it's much heavier when it has a bronze bench. But that's still the same exact orphan train rider. Henry Jose was a Kansas City mayor, and then later on he was a congressman. He was a representative. So yeah. You don't have to decide right now. Just let me know. Thank you. Oh. I'd like to.
I personally would probably in line with the more economic of the two.
Well, not only that, but it's manufactured locally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sounds fun.
I agree.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Anyone else care to make a public comment? At this time, public comments are closed. We'll move forward with appointments. The Board of Building Trades.
We have Cheryl Lanu's position, the general public at large is due to expire May 31st, and she's expressed interest to go again. We have advertised for the position with no response, so I recommend that you appoint her. This memo is off now. I think you got copies of James Reynolds, JR General Contracting. General contractor position we've been short for a couple of years, and he promised us 2 or 3 months ago he'd apply, and I made him rush the thing down here today, so because we have a meeting on the 6th of June, but the next commission meeting until the 7th, so I'm hoping to get him appointed today to the general contractor position. I do not know the length of his term because he's replacing an abandoned position, so it may be in the next couple of months we have to reappoint him for another term, but we're glad he's on board now and we can have some meetings and move forward. So I recommend we appoint Cheryl and James Reynolds to the Board of Building Trades.
I'll make a motion that we accept Cheryl and James to the Board of Building Trades.
Second.
Who wants it? It's been moved by Commissioner Sacco and seconded by Commissioner Pounds to appoint Cheryl Lanu and James Reynolds to the Board of Building Trades. For any point of clarification, do we need to specify that Ms. Lanu is being reappointed to her position and that Mr. Reynolds is appointed to an unfinished or an I guess an abandoned
No,
position?
not in particular. I
Okay.
don't think so.
Fair enough. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? This time, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruno. Moving forward with new business, the presentation of the 2016 audit.
Good evening. Neil Phillips of Jared Gilmore and Phillips. Gonna have those extra copies. Literally hot off the press. I sent them over the weekend, and they said, we have a board meeting this week. Can you come? I was like, okay. If you can squeeze me into the agenda, I will come. So literally hot off the press.
Thank you.
All right, I want to skip past the letters that are in there and dive straight into the audit. Page 1, 2, and 3 is the independent auditor's report. The first paragraph talking about what we audited, being the city of Concordia as of December 31st, 2016. The second paragraph is management's responsibilities and the fact that everything in this document is your numbers and your representations with what happened over the last year. The next 3 paragraphs talks about the auditor's responsibilities and the fact that we follow auditing standards that are generally accepted in the United States of America. Then we also follow what they call the Kansas Municipal Audit and Accounting Guide. So we actually have 2 sets of rules that we look at and follow when we're doing your audit. The next section is what they call a basis for adverse opinion. And that actually goes on to the next page to say that we do give an adverse opinion on your financial statements in accordance with GAAP. In the state of Kansas, we're allowed to follow what they call regulatory basis of accounting, which is Kansas cash basis and budget laws, meaning you can't spend it if you don't have the money in the bank, and you can't spend it unless you have public approval. That's the budget process. We don't keep track and don't record capital assets in your books is basically what it comes down to. So we haven't put a value on all the streets of the city. We haven't put a value on all the water lines, sewer lines, those type of things. You're only seeing the cash less any encumbrances or accounts payable. So obligations that you've made as a city. We do footnote long-term debt, but that doesn't come out into play when you're looking at unencumbered cash balances. So actually the second paragraph down on page 2 is the most important one in the entire document. In our opinion, the financial statement referred to above presents fairly in all material respects the aggregate cash and unencumbered cash balance of the city of Concordia as of December 31st, 2016, and the aggregate receipts and expenditures for the year then ended in accordance with financial reporting provisions of the Kansas Municipal Audit and Accounting Guide described in Note 1. What does that mean to you? That is what they call an unmodified opinion on the regulatory basis of accounting, which that means that based on the audit testing that we did, we feel like the numbers that are in the audit are materially correct, an accurate representation of what happened during the year and how you ended the year. The next couple paragraphs talks about the supplemental information and our responsibility with that. And as you read through those 2 large paragraphs, you're going to see that everything that's in this document we take responsibility for, saying we've audited everything that's in here and feel like the numbers are materially accurate. So if you turn to page 4, page 4 is statement number 1. According to the Kansas Municipal Audit Guide, it is prepared to show users at a glance that you're in compliance with the Kansas cash basis laws. So 4th column over from the left, ending unencumbered cash, you glance down through there. If any of those were negative, you would be in violation of Kansas statutes. And that's not only just a year-end thing. You got to remember that's an ongoing thing too. It's an every month thing. But at year-end, you can see that we were in compliance with the Kansas cash basis laws, meaning that we ended every fund in a positive balance. And you look down through there, first glance, if you're just looking at totals, on the second page, you started the year out with $5.3 million, brought in 9.7, spent 11.4, and ended the year at 3.6. At first glance, you say, oh my gosh, what happened to our reserves? What happened to our unencumbered cash balances? Well, you gotta think back, in 2015, we had those bond proceeds that we didn't spend until 16. That was like $1.2 million of bond proceeds. So there's a reason. So if you actually look at your individual funds, you know, and actually with Kansas statutes, I like how they lay them out here, because they put them in categories. Like your top fund is your general fund. We started with 981, brought in 4.1, spent 4.2, ended the year at 836. The next section is your special purpose funds. Those are monies that are brought in for a specific purpose. You can't spend them for anything else but what they're brought in for. The easiest example to understand is like the special highway fund. Every time somebody puts gas in their car at the local gas station, some of that money goes into the state as gasoline tax, turns around and comes back to us. We cannot spend that money for anything but streets and alleys. We have a water line break, we have a sewer pump go out. That money can't help us. It can only be spent on streets and alleys. So that's why they named that the special purpose funds, that whole section there. So you can see we have money that is sitting there, $10,000 that was collected for the library, industrial development, special highway, library employee benefits. All those funds were raised for that specific purpose and can't be used just for anything. Then you've got the section that it's a little bit down, halfway down the page, it's bond and interest. Those are the monies that you're collecting to make your bond payments. Then you got capital project funds. Those capital project funds, you're gonna know, you remember as you're going along, those are the funds, when they say public approval, when I was talking about that earlier, you can't spend the money if you don't have public approval. Those special project funds are not through your normal budget process, that's your individual special capital projects. That's why all your vendors come back to you with like change orders, because they know if they don't bring that change order in, they get getting paid that a little bit extra that they're bringing that in for, because that's the public approval, as it comes through the commission and approved at that point in time. Then you got your business funds down there towards the bottom of that page. The state of Kansas decided that they wanted to name those business funds because they wanted you to understand that you should treat those like a business. They're a utility fund. Those mainly are the utility funds that you've got down there. Utility funds, the state statute says that once you pay for all the expenses of the utility fund, you can use the profit for whatever you want. And they want you to realize that. That's why they called them the business funds. Then down below that, you've got the trust funds, which are monies that are held for a specific purpose in trust, such as the cemetery endowment and the small animal trust fund. It does have a reconciliation of 2016 cash numbers on the very last column there, so that you can show how it reconciles to the cash balances that are in the bank. Because Kansas cash basis is cash receipts, doesn't include any accounts receivable. So if somebody owes us money, it's not included in these revenue numbers. But the expenditures number does include payables. So it's almost like a hybrid. If you own a business, you try to do full accrual where you recognize revenues. Whenever somebody does a billing, you recognize that as revenue. In our case, it's only cash basis, but the expenditures are on the accrual basis. So it's a little bit different. And I think they do that because that's the term of you can't obligate more than what you have, meaning you can't do an accounts payable or an encumbrance without having money in the bank. Does that kind of make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's the one we'll spend the most time on. Page 6, 7, 8, 9 are the significant accounting policies. Pretty much the first page describes your city and the component units that are out there. The next few pages talk about what the regulatory basis of accounting is. So everything I've just been talking about, here's a word-for-word explanation of what cash receipts are, what the different types of funds are. It talks about the budget process, got some good dates in there so you can remember what dates you have to get your budget in by. If you turn to page 9 at the bottom of that page, it gets into information that's specific to your city. And this is stewardship, compliance, and accountability. And this is our testing of your Kansas statutes. This is where the KMAG comes into play, the Kansas Municipal Audit and Accounting Guide. They give us a list of of statutes to test you on an annual basis. They give us, they move it around every once in a while. And this year's checklist, last year's was like a 10 or 11 page checklist. This year it was back to 9. But they tell us different stuff to look at on an annual basis. If we noted anything, it would be in this section. As you can see there, we did not have any violations of Kansas statute. Top of page 10 talks about the deposits and investments, because you are limited by the state of Kansas on how you can invest your money and where you can invest your money. Just talks about how we have our money invested. Capital lease obligations there at the bottom of page 10 is a
I have a
display.
question.
Yes, sir.
Is
Yes.
this a good time to ask?
Yes.
Page 10,
Uh-huh.
the third paragraph under deposits and investments.
Uh-huh.
At year end, the city's carrying amount of deposits was $4,060,000, and the bank balance was $4,167,000. And then the bank balance was held in 5 banks, resulting in a concentration of credit risk. Of the bank balance, only $1,200,000 was covered by FDIC insurance, and the rest,
Was covered by securities pledged.
what
So
exactly
it
does
was
that mean?
secured. What that is in the state of Kansas, banks are required, if you have your money in their bank and you have more than $250,000, they are required to put your name on some of their investments so that you are secured if the bank would fail. The example there would be your home mortgage. The bank puts their name on your mortgage and files it at the county. With that lien, they have no right to your house unless you default. They can go out and grab your house to satisfy the payment of your mortgage. It's the same thing with the investments at the bank. The bank will actually put your name on some treasury bills, treasury notes. It's a requirement that they are all government securities. So mainly they're treasury notes, treasury bills. They put your name on them, and you have no right to them. You don't get the interest off of them. You are a secondary name on that, where if the bank ever failed, you have an agreement that you can go out and grab those treasury notes to pull back in case the bank failed.
So,
So you were fully secured at your end.
very good. That was my question. Thanks.
Yes, and we are required to test that throughout the year. We randomly pick the statutes or the rules in the Kansas Municipal Law Guide says we go out and randomly pick 2 other months, and we look at the entire month. We find the highest balance on the bank statement, and then we go and make sure that you had the highest amount of securities pledged to make sure that you had that covered. Because at any one point in time, you could, when you get your tax distribution at the end of January, all of a sudden you've got this high bank balance, because it's always bank, it's not book, it's bank balance. You got to make sure that you're covered. And statutes worry about, the Kansas statutes worry about that. That's why we're supposed to go back and test those. Almost always, I always test January, and then I'll pick some other month. Because January is when you get your big tax distribution from the county. So I always want to make sure that you've got enough pledged in January.
Okay. All right.
Page 11, it gets a little small because there's a lot of information on there. That is the long-term debt of the city. The notes, the mortgages, however you want to say it. You've got general obligation bonds, and then you've got some, they come down through there. You've got some of them that are paid with tax levies, some that are paid with tax levies and utility receipts. And then the capital lease also shows up in here, because capital leases are another form of financing for Kansas cities. You can see there you started the year out with $7.1 million, and you actually paid that down by $979, leaving you with a balance of $6.1 million of long-term debt. The next page actually shows the payout of that. And you're going to notice it's in 5, you got the first 5 years, and then 5-year chunks after that. And the reason that we do that is because most city planning is done in 5-year phases. You can see there in the very top one, 2012, it's going to end up paying off in 2022. So it just has one last payment there in that 6th column over. 2020, we're going to end up paying off the next 3. 2021, actually we pay that one off in 2021 also. So you can see there as we get further out, it just shows you how your payments are going to be made. You can see down at if you look down at the very bottom, you're going to see that as a city we did some planning there, and most bond companies help you do that. Is your total principal and interest payments? You've got them laid out to be about $1.2 million a year for the next 4. Then we start paying. Then we got a lot of debt paid off, and then they're just falling into place after that. But most bond companies will help you keep your bond payment consistent. You know, sometimes you'll have a bond that actually doesn't even have a principal payment until way out in the future. Well, that's because they're trying to keep your principal and interest payments constant. Top of page 13 talks about operating leases. You do rent some items. We're required to disclose how much you paid in rent and future maturities. We do disclose those future maturities, but those do not show up in that front financial statement as an encumbrance or an accounts payable, because most leases have that 30 or 60-day clause that says I can get out of that lease. And so those commitments into the future are not reflected up in the front. We disclose your economic development loans. Then footnote number 8 at the bottom of that page is your capers and system. We talk about the fact that you did pay last year $136,000. I'm looking at the very last paragraph on that page. You paid $136,000 into capers on behalf of your employees and $172,000 into the KP&F system. We talked about this a little bit last year. Make sure that everybody still understands. That next page, very first paragraph, talks about the city's portion of the state's shortfall. The state of Kansas is in deficit with the capers and the KP&F system. They've now required, there's a rule out there that if you were doing GAAP financial statements, that would be an obligation of the city. So under the KMAG, we're only required to tell you how much that liability would be. In your case, it's $1,283,000 for capers and $1,662,000 for KP&F. And that's basically if capers stopped as of December 31st, that would be the portion of the shortfall of how much would be your responsibility to be able to cover employees that were hired at that point in time into the future. I don't believe that to be a true liability, because the state of Kansas, you know, I assume that they would step up and pay any shortfall if it ever did close down, but we are required to disclose that that is your piece of the state's shortfall in the capers and KP&F system. Questions about that?
Has there ever been where a state didn't do that?
I can't tell you for sure. I'm halfway thinking the state of Illinois said they wouldn't, and that's the reason Detroit ended up taking bankruptcy, is because their OPEB number was so big. They had other problems too, not just that. They had a lot of other problems. Believe me, their general fund was like way negative. But my understanding is the straw that broke the camel's back, isn't that what they say, was when they seen this liability piece out there. So, like I said, I don't know that I've seen a state that's made you come up with that money. You know, the state tomorrow could say, okay, I want that $1.6 million. Most cities and school districts aren't going to have that money because of the caper system. I mean, the school districts, the colleges, cities, there's a few nonprofits that got let into the system at one point in time. They're not allowed anymore, but a few of them were. There's just not the money out there, you know. The state called you tomorrow and told you they wanted $2.8 million. I'm pretty sure the city would have to say, you're going to have to come up with some kind of payment plan because we don't have it. That's why I say I don't believe that's a true liability. I think the state's general fund would actually probably end up covering that, because the majority of the city's issues are their investment strategies back in the 80s, 90s. You know, that's our shortfall piece of it. School districts, their shortfall is a lot bigger number, because school districts were allowed to get into the caper system, and within like 2 years after being into the system, teachers were allowed to take full benefits even though they hadn't paid in. And so that created this big gap that they thought would be made up with interest earned over time, but the school district's numbers are a lot bigger and a lot scarier when you go look at the Capers and their portion of that shortfall. Just because, mainly because they allowed those teachers to come in, take full retirement benefits. You know, if you only paid in for 2 years, you didn't pay in enough to be able to get full benefits, but they allowed to take those full benefits. Kind of make sense? Capital projects there, footnote number 9, we talk about those capital projects and disclose those there because you are required, those are the specific projects approved by you, meaning they're outside the budget process, outside the general fund, outside the public hearing that you have for your budget process in August. Notes receivable, loans receivable there at the bottom of the page. You do have some notes receivable out there. Other long-term obligations from operations on the next page. That's basically a disclosure of your vacation and sick time pay. You do have $121,000 in that last paragraph of unused vacation at year end for all employees. That does not show up as a liability up in the front of the financial statements. That's a disclosure of the dollar amount. The next page talks about your post-employment benefits, and then the bottom page talks about risk management. Most cities in the state of Kansas handle that through the purchase of insurance policies. You do that, plus you're a member of the Kansas Municipal Insurance Trust for your workers' comp. We disclose that there. Page 17 is interfund transfers. We're required to disclose all the transfers that you have. And as you glance down through there, you're going to see that all of them have a statutory number beside them, meaning that they were all legal transfers that you made in between any of the individual funds. Subsequent events at the last paragraph there on page 17, if you had any material events happen after year end, most of the time what gets disclosed there is if you issued some new debt, made an obligation of monies that were, you know, like a $1 million project that you're going to pay for with this much debt and this much city proceeds. In your case, as you read through that paragraph, you can see there are no material subsequent events. All right, the rest of this is going to go quick. Page 18 is schedule number 1. Shows users at a glance that you're in compliance with the cash basis laws. Very last column to the right there, if any of those were positive, unfortunately it's the opposite. If any of those were positive, you would be in violation of Kansas statute. As you can see, all of your funds ended under budget, meaning that we were in compliance with the budget laws of the state of Kansas, which what that means to you is that all money was publicly approved, was spent in the proper manner that it was supposed to. The rest of the book is the by fund information. Like page 19 is the general fund. The very top line is ad valorem tax. We put a prior year comparison in there because we did your prior year audit. You brought in $797,000 in property taxes from your citizens in 2015. In 2016, you brought in $826,000 of property taxes. But the budget column is how much you actually levied, $853,000. So that means the variance column, $26,000, is the citizens that did not pay their property taxes in the year 2016. Then right below that is the hope that that $26,000 comes in the next year in that delinquent tax line. Because that delinquent tax line is the taxpayers that did not pay their taxes in the prior year. That would be the 15 taxes unpaid, paid in 16 come in as delinquent taxes. But you got prior year comparisons all the way through the entire rest of the document. I'm not going to sit and go through each of the individual funds. As you look through information here, you're going to see that the numbers that you have presented before you were the exact same numbers that you've seen before. When we get to the letter, there's a separate letter that's in there. We're going to talk about adjustments, and we did not have any audit adjustments this year. It means staff had everything correct when we arrived. Makes our job easier. That separate letter that's in there is what they call the presentation letter, in which it would be information that in the past we would have came to you orally and talked to you and said, hey, we got Larry or Amber won't cooperate, we need you to make them cooperate. In this case, you're gonna read through this letter, you're gonna see it as a boilerplate letter because we did not have any disagreements with management. We didn't have to consult any outside accountants because you were doing something crazy with your accounting system. It is a boilerplate letter with no exceptions. Then pages 3 on is what we call the client representation letter or management representation letter, which that's the representations that have been made between the auditor and management. I call it the reminder letter because as management reads through it, they should have talked to me about everything that's in there. As you read through it, you're going to see it is a boilerplate letter because we didn't have any lawsuits that we had to talk about. We didn't have any conflicts of interest that we needed to talk about. We didn't have any, it just goes through all the different items in there. That's the representations that have been made between management and the auditors. And we're just required to now give it to you in writing so that everybody can see those representations. I always tell management as they read through that letter, if there was something, hopefully they talk to me about it. Because it's important. All those things that are in that letter are important audit issues, so.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Going back on page 15, number 11, obligations. Is the city, is that telling me that the city could be obligated to pay out $245,000 if that company defaulted and $100,000 on the other, or the original amount?
Yes, and you've got CDs that have been pledged to cover those amounts. You've got the money already sitting in the bank, set aside. You've basically, the bank has guaranteed those with you guaranteeing those with a CD. Yes.
Okay. Was it the 245 and on 100 then?
Yes.
That's guaranteed? Okay.
Yes.
That's out of our revolving loan fund money.
Right. I should have said that too. That's out of monies that you have that are set aside for that revolving loan fund. So it's not fun. It's not coming out of the general fund. It's not coming out of the water fund. It's the revolving loan funds that you have set aside, that you have money set aside just for that.
So that would be covered if they went out without hitting the general fund?
Yes.
Okay,
Exactly.
thank you.
Thanks, Larry. I should have said that when he asked that. Overall, staff does a really good job. We enjoy coming to see you, and she makes our job easy. In fact, we're going to, this will be, I think, the 3rd year in a row, we're going to be able to discount it from our original contracted price. So, and that's because your staff does an excellent job in keeping the books in really good order.
Good to hear.
Well, as usual, you somehow make that interesting to listen to. I'm amazed.
I know it's hot off the press and you just got it. If you do have questions, I know Amber knows where every single number in that thing came from because they're her numbers. But if you do have questions, you could always email me or call me, and I'd be glad to try to answer them for you.
I know I appreciated the opportunity to talk with you going through this process. And I would agree with Commissioner Parker that I'm very appreciative that there are folks that are able to make good sense of this and relate it to someone like me that doesn't have as easy of a task doing so. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to.
I'll move to accept the audit and to authorize the mayor to sign the management representation letter.
Second?
It's been moved by Commissioner Pounds and seconded by Commissioner Hash to accept the audit and authorize me as the mayor to sign the management representation letter. Is there any further discussion at this time? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Yep. Just one copy. Yep. Thank you, Stacy. Thank you. Okay, at this time, move forward with the Cloud Core budget request.
Good evening. Before you, you have your Cloud Court budget request. First bullet point, our directors list, and so you can see that on that third page, our board of directors. The second bullet point, I believe, was our budget, and so that's on the following few pages. And then I included our year in review 2016, our projects year to date, well, just for the 2016 year. You should have all received that earlier on in the year when we did our annual meeting, so you've had probably plenty of time to mull that over. But as far as our request goes, we are requesting the same amount of funds that we've requested since 2012 for the operation of Cloud Corp, $55,000, and of course, between the county and the city, and then private contributions and contributions from other municipalities, we get to a third, and almost a third on that private contributor, and we continue to work towards getting that to a full third, but we're very close. So our amount hasn't changed, and again, 2 years ago, and you all know this, you were allocating $14,000 for small business development. We have privatized that and brought that down to $3,000, saving you $11,000 a few years ago and year after year. So we're requesting that $3,000 separate for small business development, and we employ the same person, actually, Linda Sutton. She does a good job for us, but we privatized it and made it a lot cheaper. So our request is the same as the last for a long time. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Let me just add that sometimes I sit here and reflect on how easy my job is because of the brilliant people I'm surrounded with. Tonight, that's literally true. Here's Amber, you just heard about her from the author. Here's Ashley, don't know what we'd do without her. Just week after week, day after day, I get good guidance, excellent counsel, he's not helpful.
Thanks, Larry. I feel like I'm bothering him more than anything, but I bother him every day.
Keep after it, Ashley.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This time we move forward with the Cloud Village budget request.
Hello, I'm Sheila Jackson, and I just took over the management position in December for the Concordia Housing Authority, which is Cloud Village Complex. And it was built in '78, and as far as I know, we've never requested any money from the city. And we are requesting just $5,000 just to kind of help us get on top of a few of our repairs. We have several major repairs that we are going to be in the works of. We need to replace windows. We have exterior doors that need replaced. So currently we have 2 vacant apartments that are being rehabbed, and so the cost of those adds up quite quickly. And so any funds that you would have available would be appreciated. We're on a pretty limited budget. And I had already sent you the information that kind of shows our income from tenants and from what we get from rural development versus what our monthly expenses have been. And I started that January, then up through April. So if you have any questions.
Is this a one-time request, or do you see next year another request?
It would be nice to have a continuous, I think a lot of the repairs were kind of put off because of funding, and so there's so many things that if we don't get on top of them, eventually you're just gonna have a shell of a building. The exterior trim has not been painted for a long time, so there's areas where the wood has wood rot. And the screen doors, a lot of the screen doors, well, as you see in this picture, that's our handicap parking stall right there that has a huge crack right where the person would get out of their vehicle, which is a big tripping issue. You can see the screen doors have just screen over top of them, the trim on the doors there. There's just lots of repairs that
A lot
need
of
to be
deferred
taken care of.
maintenance.
Yeah. That is
How does this get funded?
well, we We are funded through rural development, or we have a 50-year note with rural development that started in '79. And so the tenants pay rent based on their income. It's for elderly, disabled or handicapped, and it's low income. So they pay based on 30% of their income. Then we have 32 apartments, and rural development gives us 24 slots of rental assistance. And so what that means is they will pay us the difference of the base rent from what the tenant pays to make up that difference, and so that's how we get a little bit of income.
So the income that you get plus a little difference really just covering the notes.
Yeah, well, it covers a little more than the notes, but then our monthly expenses on top of that. The tenants pay electricity, but we pay everything else. And so, we have the monthly expenses everybody would have in their own house on top of repairs. So it would be nice to get funding to do a lot of the exterior repairs. That way, when we do have a little extra money as apartments become vacant, we can fund that to update the inside of the apartments. We have apartments that have the original hardware in their bathroom, like the shower valves and from the 70s. So, yeah, I think there's a picture, yeah, that's a picture of it, which this particular one right here is having an issue right now with the valve, and they had a horrible time even finding the part, and it was outrageous. I can't remember the price of the part, but there's no access to it, and so the wall behind it is the kitchen, which was recently had cabinets placed in. Well, to replace that, they would have to pull the cabinets out, get in, cut a hole in the wall back there, or we have to do it from the bathroom side and replace the bathroom surround.
Have you had other funding? I mean, the situation with our state seems like we're just pushing some needs to the lower level, I guess you would say. And have you ever had state funding that's been withdrawn or?
No,
No, okay.
at least not as far as I know.
Now, are you guys responsible for like snow removal too?
We hire snow removal out, we hire the lawn care.
So state funding's the other income?
It's through rural development.
Full rural development, the
Yeah.
state of Kansas?
Right. Mhm.
Okay. What percentage again do they make up?
Well,
Be
we
70%
have a
of
base rent amount, and then the tenant pays based on their income on those 24 slots that we
Right.
have. And so then rural development reimburses us the difference between what the base rent is and what the tenant actually pays.
And are those ever adjusted over the years?
Like how many units you
No,
can
no,
get?
I'm talking about what that amount is.
It would
What-
be variable
The
every
base
year.
rent.
Right, we
Yeah.
just this year increased, with the new budget, we increased the base rent this year. But-
Okay, and then the state still picks up the
Right,
difference?
right,
But you may be paying 125 for yours, and I could be paying 175 for mine, and then
right.
the balance of that would be made up, so.
The only reason I asked that question was, with deterioration, maintenance costs rising, I would think that the cost would have to be adjusted almost yearly.
Right.
And then with the state picking up the balance of it.
Yeah, and I know they did increase that with this past budget, so. And I imagine that's probably something we're gonna have to look at with the coming budget as well.
Yeah, I think so.
Any further questions?
You mentioned that, there are a lot of maintenance things that you'd like to be able to do. Do you have a particular dollar amount that you think would be helpful?
Well, we're just requesting $5,000 just to start out with, just to kind of get us a start somewhere. We do have some money that we're gonna start replacing our windows because we still have the old single pane windows, and we have some insurance money that we're gonna use towards that. But our doors, we have the old swinging screen doors, and then plus the solid steel door. So we have many of the screen doors that are not working properly, won't shut. So we're looking at replacing the doors with just a steel door that has a working screen in it. And then they'll just have one door to open versus two, and it would open in. So for the elderly, that's a big issue too. The wind catches those screen doors, and that's the reason a lot of them are so. I mean, my hope would be putting any money that we would get toward doors for the exterior.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Thank you. Moving forward with Resource Council budget request.
Good evening, everyone. I sent you a whole lot of numbers in my presentation, so I'm just going to highlight a couple of these big ones. The Resource Center is not asking for any additional funds. We would like our budget to remain the same as it was last year. And so the important numbers here to focus on are that we served 1,291 individuals in this county in 2016. Turning it over to 2017 to kind of put it in perspective for you. As of May 15th, we have already served almost 500 individuals, so we are easily going to pass our number for last year. As we are entering our busiest season now, between June and August are our busiest seasons for the food bank because families have kids out of school, so they don't receive those reduced lunches. So we are going to pick up business more than we have already, just kind of giving you a perspective of what these numbers look like. We do receive a little bit of additional funding in that we do get some grant money provided to us, and we have had great fortune in that we are very lucky that our community has supported us as well as they have. We have been very lucky to get some large donations via food drives, as well as donations of money from individuals and organizations. So we've been very fortunate there. But of course, providing food, just essential food itself, to these over 1,000 people provides that we require a certain amount of money. Just to kind of highlight on some of the other programs that we worked on in the last year, we also have our crisis funds. Those are mostly grant fed, almost 100%, but not quite. We do have a small gap where we cover maybe 10% of those grants. So far this year, we've had 132 individuals and provided over $7,000 in crisis assistance, which pays utility bills for families who cannot pay their own utility bills. So I'm about halfway down the page if you're keeping track on your copies of this. We had 133 children come through last summer for school bags, and we are already starting to receive calls on our school bag program. So we do receive a little grant funds to help offset this cost, but those bags do require that we purchase their supplies and pack them for the kiddos, and we know that it's going to be a bumper crop year. We had 175 holiday baskets go out. That was a collaborative effort with the Girl Scouts and the First Christian Church. It is the largest number of holiday baskets that we have ever done between the three organizations. In fact, it is almost double, just under double what we have done in years past for these baskets. So we had to put in a full court press in order to get this done, but we did, and so it worked quite well. We also had 143 children go through Holiday Store runs almost the same time as holiday baskets. They were about a week and a half apart. So we were very busy, very scrambling to try to get this done. One of our new programs this year was the LEAP forms. We did assist with the LEAP forms. It's one of the Kansas gas programs for low-income families to essentially get a small stipend toward their utility bills. They don't get to keep the money. It goes right back to their utility bills so that they can hopefully have an easier time paying those. And we have just completed our first mobile pantry last week, in fact, and we'll be finishing it this week. We had 100 boxes, 66 went to Concordia, and I am pleased to report Mobile Pantry will actually be mobile for the first time ever this time around, and that 35 boxes will go to Meltonville tomorrow to be delivered to families there who cannot come to the food bank here in Concordia. So we're making a pretty solid effort to try to get these things sort of funded and under control. We did have one funding setback this year in that we no longer have our investment acre program through the state of Kansas. That has previously been a matching grant program where we raised some of the funds and they raised some of the funds to match them. Unfortunately, their corporate donor is no longer able to match our funds, so we have lost a percentage of that amount, which was money directly to the state for our supplies coming from the Wichita Food Bank. So we are looking to try to kind of offset that a little bit. So that's where a large chunk of our budget, if we are able to get it this year, will go. Do you have any questions for me regarding our programs, things that we're working on, any of those kind of things?
How has your rental income from Club 81, has that helped out
It
any?
is picking up. It is picking up. Of course, we had our ribbon cutting in the fall after we had our renovation last spring. And we put a little dollars into making it better, and we are picking up, making solid business now. So we're beginning to be able to say we are rented 3 of 4 weekends out of each month. So we
good.
had a small decrease for April, just a little downturn because kind of late spring, so not as many events. But we are easily going to pick that back up July and August.
What kind of organizations or individuals, families are
We've had a variety. I've
renting?
hosted everything from 80th birthday parties to 50th wedding anniversaries. The spring has been pretty well dictated by day organization meetings. So we've had the North Central Kansas Planning Commission in. They had a 2-day meeting event there where they discussed their budget. We've had a couple of courthouse meetings there. And the most recent is we had the counties of Kansas counties meeting there so that they could come in and discuss some of the travel and tourism aspects, budget aspects for the counties. So we're looking at a wide variety of meetings.
and you charge rent for each?
We charge rent for each one, and we're looking at possibly expanding our services so that we will have a little bit more technical availability, so that if people wanted to, have presentations, PowerPoints, that we'll be able to do that. So we're working on that,
Right.
making it a little easier for them to get access to all of the tech. So.
I know there's a great deal of need in this community, so I appreciate the work that you all are doing.
Thank you.
Any more questions? No? Thank you. Moving forward with senior center budget request.
Hello, I am Tony Burnett. I am the bookkeeper and the director of public transportation for the Senior Citizen Center. We've got some of our board members here with us. Right ahead, we're requesting $30,000 this year. This is $10,000 more than we requested last year. You funded that in part last year, and we're very appreciative of that. We are requesting this money to help us with 3 different things, really. First would be the support of our kitchen staff. Our kitchen staff would otherwise be making minimum wage, and that's not something that's going to be rectified anytime soon. They are paid through the North Central Flint Hills Area Agency on Aging, and that organization is dealing with a 30% cut from the Older Americans Act that started last year, continues this year. And there's also possible funding to be decreased that could impact us through the national budget through HUD. We are requesting the $20,000 to help with our, that would be approximately $4,000. So approximately $16,000 would be with our operations for other programs such as public transportation and just keeping the senior center open and running for lights, water, gas, those sort of things. And then in addition, the $10,000 more that we are requesting than we requested last year is because of our flooring. Our floor tile has begun to separate from the concrete below it. It's beginning to buckle in places and create bumps. We're kind of worried that this is a trip hazard for our seniors. A lot of our seniors have difficulty walking, and if they were to fall, it could be something that would be deadly for them. So now that I've told you what I'm asking for, I'm going to kind of talk about what we're doing. There's a second page that I included just today, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what it is that we're doing. We served 20,126 meals in 2016. To kind of put that number in perspective, that would feed a family of 3 for 6 years. It takes us 30 volunteers, about 130 hours each month to deliver over 700 meals to homebound individuals. We served over 4,600 cups of coffee. We have about 18 people that show up every day and drink coffee with and have social time in our center. We had over 1,240 hours of exercise that our seniors performed. 3 days a week, we've got an average of around 8 seniors coming in and exercising to keep themselves healthy. We had hundreds of hours of Bonanza and Gunsmoke and The Price is Right and a few others displayed in our lobby on our TV. We have card players that show up for 3 different clubs every month. And we also host veterans, a Veterans Affairs representative that comes out of Salina. We have hearing aid services. Alan Grigsby comes and consults with people. We have blood pressure checks. Home health care specialist comes. They present health care presentations, and they also present nutrition information to us. In addition to that, we also do public transportation. And last year we did 17,520 rides with public transportation, which is about 34,000 miles, which circle the earth 1 1/3 times. 53% of our passengers are general public, have no association with the senior center whatsoever. We take people for all kinds of purposes. You can see the graph that I put together here. We did about 1,000 rides for education, taking a lot of students to the college. We did over 2,000 rides taking people to work. We did about the same amount taking people to get food, meals. About 3,000 rides worth of medical purposes, be that doctor's appointments or dentist appointments or things like that. And then we did about 4,500 rides to the businesses around here in Concordia. We serve only the Concordia area, 5-mile radius from our senior center, and we'd really appreciate your help.
Did you get, you applied for funding from the county as well, correct?
Yes. The funding that we applied for from the county goes also to support the meals, the kitchen staff. We use about $7,000 a year to support the kitchen staff, and typically we've received $4,000 from the city and $3,000 from the county.
Any other questions?
Thank you
very much.
Thanks, Tony.
Moving forward with Frank Carlson Library budget request.
I'm new to the community, so I should introduce myself. My name's Hayden Murphy. I'm the instructor of English as a second language at the college and the newest member of the Board of Trustees at the Frank Carlson Library. First, I'd like to thank the city for the commitment to supporting the library's services and programs, especially the commitment to build a sidewalk that will lead up to the Orphan Train Museum. The library continues to be a leader in offering new services to the public, including early literacy programs, which takes literacy activities to daycares and preschools every week. And we have these new little launch pads, which I've just seen tonight, and now I want to take one home for myself. These are preloaded with educational apps for preschoolers. They can take these home and engage in all kinds of learning activities. During the last 10 years, our circulation has increased. Just with interlibrary loan transactions, those have increased by 75% over that time, including 5,184 transactions in 2016 alone. We've also offered increased programming, both in the number of programs offered and in attendance. We've increased the number of programs for children by 22%, the number of programs for adults by 36%, and attendance at these programs has nearly doubled. And outreach programming has increased by 68% since 2007. So we have a very vibrant library that's very involved in the community and provides a vital service. What this means with the growth of services and programs is that we're understaffed. And so you'll notice in our budget proposal that we're asking for an increase of $8,577. This grows out of a decision that we would like to move one of our part-time employees to full-time status. The library currently has 9 employees, 2 full-time, the rest part-time, 1 salaried, and 8 hourly workers. But with the increased library activities and intense face-to-face contact with the public, we're just not able to continue that level without additional man-hours. Our current hourly wage, average hourly wage for those 8 hourly workers is $9.70 an hour. And we'd like to propose an increase of about 20 cents per hour. So if this is approved, the average pay for those hourly workers would be $9.92 per hour. As you know, the building was constructed in 1976, and so maintenance has become very, very important to keep our library in good shape. Part of the budget plan will include a plan to transfer up to $17,000 to our capital improvement fund. There have been many capital improvement funds over the past 10 years, including a new roof, new bathroom floors, outside sprinkler system, new air conditioning system, and our beautiful new electronic sign in the front yard. The library has not asked for any additional funding from the city for any of these projects. A couple of things that we know will need to be done soon will be repairing a book drop outside the library, which has rusted, and so materials that are dropped there are getting wet, and we don't want them to get damaged. And also upgrading the fire alarm system. So with that, we're requesting a slight increase over our budget for 2017. It would add up to about $714 a month that we're asking in addition to what we received in 2017. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy? As other previous mayors can attest, one of the benefits of this office is serving on the library board, and I've had the opportunity to work with these individuals and really am impressed with what they do and the services they provide, and very fortunate to have a library and staff of this caliber in our community. So, thank you very much, Mr. Murphy. Okay. At this time, we'll move forward with an ordinance approval.
At our last meeting, Matt Bouchard from the college presented to you the request that was outlined in the letter they had sent us previously, which is in the packet. I just put that in there to remind us what all we're talking about. This essentially is for a function that the college plans to hold for alumni on August 12th of this year. And as part of their plan, they plan to hold it at the plaza and also to use Broadway Street adjacent to the plaza from 6th Street to the alley between Broadway and between 6th and 7th Streets. To do that, they need your authorization in 2 respects. One is to close the street temporarily during the time specified in the ordinance, and the other is to be able to serve alcoholic beverages in that area at that time. So that is what this ordinance will accomplish, and we recommend it to you.
I'll move to approve ordinance 2017-3121.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Parker and seconded by Commissioner Pounds to approve ordinance number 2017-3121. Is there any further discussion? The question that I had, and I think that it's been addressed, but the hope could be that this could serve as a model for future, and that we might be able to, instead of identifying specific ordinances each and every occurrence, but to create some sort of mold or model in which we could activate this upon approval.
Thank you. Interestingly enough, Mr. Mayor, the state legislature may be ready to help us out on that. There's a bill that's been working its way through, and I checked the status again today, and it appears to be headed toward final passage. that would allow cities to establish outdoor alcohol use zones on a permanent basis. So we just designate a zone, and if someone wants to use it, they come in and pay us a little license fee. We don't have to do this. So hopefully that will get through. After our last meeting on this subject, I saw that bill and spoke to Elaine about it, and then she in turn put me in touch with the legislative research people. We had a little conversation back and forth. So it sounds like it would be very satisfactory for us. A lot of cities are pushing it, so maybe that will take care of our problem for us. If not, the converse of that is that we do need to keep doing this. There are limits in the state law. If they don't pass that, that's why they're passing this law. So it looks like we may not even need it for this year if they make that effective July 1st.
The only thing I would hope that they have been in contact with Chief Johnson, so the security concerns could be eliminated and coordination could be handled.
And I know the chief's in contact with him about that, or knows about it.
Because I think that's
you know,
imperative.
I think what we're planning to do is kind of have a sit down. I was waiting for the college people to get through the semester. We'll just see if we can do a meeting with the city folks and them to work out whatever there is that needs to be worked out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's a motion that's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? At this time, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Ordinance passes. Motion passes. Moving on to the manager's report.
I almost couldn't come up with anything to talk about this evening, but I know you'd be disappointed. Can we drop the lights a little bit, Stacy, see if that works any better? But I just thought I would mention, I've come to the end of sort of the annual go-to city manager and city attorney meetings time, and I've gone over the last couple of months to 2 meetings in Wichita and 2 in Kansas City on various subjects. People might wonder what in the world we talk about. So what I brought you is just a couple of screenshots from a presentation 2 weeks ago at the University of Kansas School of Public Administration's annual program, which is pretty usually pretty good. This was from a professor talking about methods of engagements with community members. And I won't try to give you her lecture, but a couple slides caught my eye. I think first advice at the top is always just good to know. But she was talking here about things you should bring into city manager's work in dealing with people and trying to get things going. Social connections, optimism, appreciation, gratitude, purpose, and meaning. Good things for us all to keep in mind. And you know, as I go about my work, believe it or not, I do kind of have those things in mind. Sometimes I think optimism is the key to all that. Nothing else really matters if you're putting a long face on it. Could I have the other one then, please? Focus on the community level. Down the right-hand side, they're talking about you know, what does it mean to try to empower a community? What are you trying to do? Deter threats, improve quality of life, and facilitate citizen participation. Another speaker spoke about thinking in terms of outcomes for your citizens, which is a nice perspective to put it in. Actually, to digress from my slide just a minute, this speaker started her city management career about 3 years ago in the city of Edgerton, which is just outside of Overland Park, about 15 miles removed from the metro area. And she became the manager of a staff of 9 city employees in this little town that had about 50% poverty rate. And she'd hardly gotten her feet in the door when the BNSF Railroad announced it was building a $1 billion transfer facility right there within the city limits, and has done so. And then they recently, Amazon relocated and opened its distribution facilities, 2,500 employees. So all this has happened under her watch, and the city's gone from 9 employees to 25 in that period of time. But she was saying this really hasn't seemed to touch that half of the community that's poverty level, and they haven't really seemed to share in that. And she was talking about the programs they have to try to engage those folks and get them to a point where they can be useful employees for Amazon, and realize that if maybe they have 2 people working at Amazon's entry wage in a household, they're really living a pretty good life. So that was an interesting, she's been a frequent speaker since this happened. They're all still kind of shell-shocked down there. But it was interesting to hear that and thinking in terms of outcomes. So not only as we chase development, okay, we want to develop this, we want to develop this, but what is the bottom line for our citizens? It's just a good way to think about it. But the real reason I showed this slide is because I just thought it was funny. Only you can prevent forest fires, and just read the part down below that. seriously, we've been defunded, it's just you now. There seems to be that story here, Smokey the Bear doesn't get any federal money anymore. So that's something I think that also echoes what we heard tonight from these agencies. They are coming to us, one after another, not all of them, but many of them, because they aren't getting the funding they used to get from state and federal sources. So now I think we're going to see more and more of this evolving on us, and what do we do? What's the answer to that one? Good question. We'll see you at budget time on that one. So I just wanted to point out, in case you wonder what we're doing at city manager meetings, we're looking at stuff like this. Do you have any questions for me this evening?
Thanks. Commissioner comments?
One, a sister of St. Joseph came up to me, who's really active in many different aspects in our community. And she was really concerned about driving north on Broadway Street to the National Orphan Train Museum and the deplorable condition of the first 5 tracks. You know, Kyle's done their part, I believe, 2 tracks, and then there's another one after that. And she said, just what do people coming to our community think of really the citizens of Concordia and the city of Concordia, that they don't do what it takes to make certain those railroad tracks are corrected and look, because maybe some of these 5,000 visitors, that's what they take from here, you know? Not necessarily all the museum spots they've been in, but shouldn't we be doing more for, you know, to really put the pressure? And she said, I can bring a group of people. And I said, well, let me just bring it up first, you know. What can we do about the railroad tracks on Broadway Street? The first 5, you know, Kyle only repaired 2, and there's 8 along there.
BNSF was the one that did the repair.
BNF, okay, sorry.
I think in Washington Street said Broadway.
Well, what is,
Yeah, I think,
is it the one closest to the
That'd be one.
orphan train?
Yeah.
That is Washington. Okay, sorry.
That's the Kyle Railroad's the first tracks there.
Okay. I mean, she was saying things about, you know, board members of the tourism office and the National Orphan Train, you know, letter writing to whoever it takes. And that, you know, we as a city, I think we've attempted to do our part. And I've tried to explain that to her. And she maybe think maybe it's going to take a larger effort to get it done.
We had some work done by Kyle a few years ago and got some response on it. We'll address that. See what we can do.
I made a special effort to drive it, and it needs some work. I mean, you know, if we got a lot of people headed that direction, I think it should look the best it could.
We make that drive, and my daughters enjoy it because they. So it's.
You can't please everybody.
Well, but I think it speaks to how significant the issue is.
Yeah.
That it's enough to warrant a near amusement park ride for a set of toddlers. Probably not as enjoyable for sisters or other folks who are in town.
Maybe it's not that, and maybe railroad folks think, hey, that's good enough, you know, but,
well,
can we
here's
make it
part
better?
of the problem on that is I had a railroad employee come through my drive-through about a month ago, and we actually only had like a 30-second conversation about it, but, you know, I'd mentioned how you'd sent that letter to Warren Buffett, and his comment more or less was, well, they can send all the letters they want. We don't have to do anything.
They do have a legal obligation to maintain safe crossing.
But the legal
But that's-
definition of a safe crossing might be challenging to hold, but then what opportunity, I guess, if they refuse to, shy of a legal battle, are there steps that the city could take that would help minimize that without a total reconstruction? I mean,
As far as us doing anything ourselves, I don't think they would permit that.
No.
Because where the railroad crosses the street, that's really their right of way.
Okay.
If you have some ideas, let me know. I'll pass them
Well,
on
I
to
think
you.
we can get on it. We've done a little bit before.
Okay, so it's the Kyle and what,
BNSF.
Yeah,
Okay.
NSF is the northernmost of the tracks.
may just turn them loose on those two.
And actually, Kyle got caught up, because this has been, what, 3 years ago or so? There were Kyle people down here talking to us from the beach. That was over a street, I believe they did something there. So we'll see what we can do.
Okay. I'll pass it on. Thanks.
I was disappointed with the attitude that the employee had about the whole thing. When they're like, well, they can send us all the letters they want. I was disappointed with that. I really was.
Actually, it's typical, working with a railroad.
It is difficult.
Yeah,
They do-
no, it is.
You can't get them moved.
Nope.
It took us years to do the BNSF bylaws.
Okay.
That's it.
Other comments?
To echo what Larry said, I just wanted to bring up that, I know we're getting these funding requests, but I talked to my parents this week, and they live in a much smaller town than this. Their senior citizen center is closing in June, I believe, June or July, because of some of these funding cuts. So I think, just like you said, it's going to come down to what local entities can do, and so it's going to be.
I've heard the assisted living in Bellevue is closing. And when it was connected with a hospital, it's closing. I mean, and they still continue to have money funds. Their police department was dismantled. Now the county's gonna take care of it. So, I mean, it's getting tough.
Did you say the police department was being?
Yeah, they let go of 4 of their officers. I think they kept 1, and then the county's gonna patrol it.
That's all.
Mr. Parker, Sacco? I don't have anything. This time, moving forward to staff comments. So arm wrestle for who goes first.
Okay, spring cleanup. That first top pile there is some of the metal we picked up around town. You can go down to the next one. The next one's a tree pile, and there's another picture of the tree pile. We also took 47 loads out there to the transfer station onto the inside, and then there was 59 loads to the pit on the outside. There was 125 loads of trees that went down there to the shop. We picked up 1,129 tires that we took to Champlin's at a cost to the city of $2,495.
Now, I've got a lot of comments about that. The fact you pick up tires, I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And then
We had to pay for that.
yeah.
Gee.
And then we had about 630 hours into the whole thing. It was 2 weeks and 2 days. We burned 252 gallons of gas and 462 gallons of diesel, which is probably close to $1,500 to cost to you. So just kind of showing some cost on spring cleanup.
Yeah, we do it every 2 years, right?
Yep.
I tell you, I got a lot of comments.
I think it's a
People
worthwhile.
really appreciate
That's
that.
good.
So it's a good thing. It's good PR.
I didn't find your couch up there. Somebody must have got it before we
Someone
got
must
there.
have got that.
I went up and looked for it, and I told Jim we got to get that before he comes
I hear
back.
I thought it was you.
Somebody else got it. So, last year, I think I told you about I was going to enclose this ditch here. So I just wanted to show you. We started on it.
Where are we, Ron?
18th and Olive.
I wonder what you guys are doing up there.
Which
yeah.
direction are we looking in?
We are looking north.
North.
Darrell Hosey owns that building, and Kim Gerard has that where the taxidermist place used to be there, right there on 18th and Olive. What we did there, first thing is what we did there is we dug up the old pipe that crossed the street there, and I had to straighten it out to match what we was going to put in. So that's what we're doing there. We dug out the old pipe, next one, and we're pulling it out on that picture. And we're setting there, we're setting new pipe in. So where it used to run backwards against where the water was going down, we straightened it out where it comes straight across there.
Well, yeah, 'cause it looked horrible there for a while. I mean, it was all washed out and everything.
Yeah,
Summer's
the whole
been
side of the
hard.
road, I mean, I have big washouts this wide, working back into the road and stuff. That was part of the reason for doing this. That's still the pipe that we put across the road there. Setting it there, we're setting the pipe there. Some of the pipe will get set in there. That there, we dug out the ditch, you know, the ditch was full of mud. We had to dig out about 2 foot of mud down in the bottom of it. I did rent a track hoe to use, and in that picture down there on the bottom there, we're starting to put dirt back in and compact it to lay the pipe. And one more, still cleaning out there. Woody's compacting the dirt. And that next one, we're starting to set pipe there. And pipe weighed like 5,000 pounds apiece.
Where do you rent the,
Caterpillar here in town.
okay.
I know the last couple pieces, I had to reach out there pretty far, and I had to have Woody put the loader bucket on top of the tracks to hold it from tipping down in there, so I didn't finish setting it. That actually went pretty good for us. There's all that elliptical pipe that we purchased down at First and Concrete. We got it set. And right at the end of that, I made an inlet there. If you look right down, next picture. If you look right down there, you'll see a little grate down there towards the end. That's where we put a transition box and switched over to 36-inch pipe, round pipe. And we make a lot of that pipe in the wintertime, so I had it on hand, so it wouldn't cost so much money. But we changed there, put a little inlet in there, and then went about 3 or 4 more pieces and turned and went back down the ditch the other direction. But that's finished product there. And there's the other side of it. Even got a little grass growing back. So, hopefully the neighbors like it.
I'm sure they do.
Yep.
Starting to look real good. Good job.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
was gonna say, I'm pretty impressed with, the way you've kept.
I know that, like that dirt piled up right there, I just went up there the other day. All that dirt, I had the county come in and clean that ditch out so I could get the water to drain a little better. And we hauled it all over to Darrell Hosey, and he was bringing it over in his loader, giving it to us because he wanted to get that to where he could drive his mower down there and mow it. Finally, yesterday, it dried up a little bit. I could get in there and smooth it up a little bit and get it straightened out. So, looks good, I think.
Yes,
Most
real
people
good.
are happy.
I'm impressed with all the work you did for a minimum amount of money too. I mean, really.
Yeah, this wasn't a
watching the
budgeted
cities.
project.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys did it, so.
It took us a little
Winter
bit of time.
project, so, yeah, it was great.
They're good.
When you
Thank you.
drive that 18th Street, I mean, all that rock would run out, you know, so, good job.
All right, I'll tell the guys.
Yep, do. Please
Thank
do.
you.
Matt, Ron handles these things, so, you know, I hardly knew this was going on, you know, there was never a problem or an issue or anything, they were stuff, they're doing it, so it was great. Before the next department, I wanted to mention, since Mr. Hosey's lawnmower just came up, we had a situation this week where he went out and helped most of the property along Highway 81, south of Taco John's, for a friend who is the owner, and he went ahead and mowed our lot out there too while he was at it. I didn't know that till this evening, so I'll give him a call and thank him for the.
Yes, please
And
do.
I'll give him free coffee for a
Well,
week.
yeah, I'll tell him that, if he can send us.
Starting Friday.
Yeah, I hope he won't send us a bill when I call him up, but we'll see.
Mayor and Commissioners, we finally got the new cameras, as you noted on the ordinance earlier. We are in process of installing Bluetooth actuators in all our cars, so that if you turn on your red lights, release a weapon out of a weapons mount, or turn on your taser, it's going to activate your camera unless it's already on. If it's already on, no hurt, no foul. But if it's not on, it'll actuate the camera for you. So we have 8 of the cars done. We got 4 to go. Everybody has their cameras already. They're already in service. And the Taser has changed their name to Axion, which is the type of camera they're selling here. And they've, since they were slow in getting our delivery, they've extended our 5-year contract by 3 more months at the back end of it. So we should be good till May of this time, 5 years from now.
Super.
Is the camera on right now, Bruce?
No.
Please.
That means his taser isn't
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Well, see, the taser, you
Keep
turn
it
it
holstered.
on, that doesn't mean you deployed it yet. You just put the power to it. And it has a Bluetooth transmitter in the battery. So the technology is kind of intriguing, actually.
Yeah, it is.
Any questions on that?
Very good.
Thanks for your work on this,
We,
Chief.
Recently got our 2 people graduated out of the academy. They're going through field training, and when they're done, we'll be up to full strength for the first time since before I came back.
Who are our new officers?
Jason Coward, he came to us after serving in the United States Army, and Amanda Waterman, who is a local resident.
Excellent. Thanks, Chief.
Last year, Megan Murdoch and Thea McMillan from front office staff came back here and they introduced them as the new EMR, emergency responders, so they could drive the ambulance. And I just want to let you know, I did try to get Kelsey Larson to come, but she didn't want to be recognized. But she went through the EMT class and passed first time. And pretty proud of her for that. And I think that's a pretty hard thing to go through, and she flew right through it. So next time you come in the office, you might mention to her. But I think it was a pretty big deal, so.
That's excellent.
Yeah, it is.
Now, is that just kind of for a backup, or is she gonna jump in and?
Reserves all of
Okay,
them.
all right.
Good.
Great.
In case you have the bigger desk and on around.
Okay.
At my age, the more the merrier.
Right, that's right.
Okay, any other staff comments?
I think we're really just showing you to think about it, but this is our capital improvement fund. It's really small, but you can see all the projects and the budget that was remaining as of the end of the year on everything that we had discussed and budgeted for, and then the 2017 budget. And the reason I'm showing you this page is basically the difference in how we budgeted and what we are at now is pretty much the 6th Street water line and the 18th Street projects coming in under budget. And so that 150,000 in the yellow column is basically what we'd have left this year to spend or put towards other projects if everything goes as planned in those projects. So we could technically discuss what to do with some of that if we wanted to use it this year. And that's what the next page is.
Before we go to changing pages there, we had a $4,000 change order for some slightly additional work on the water project on 18th Street. So that's how much that went over, and we're completely done with them.
Super.
Just a real quick question. I know you told us, but when are they gonna start on the 6th Street water project?
Probably not till October is what we're hearing.
Okay, I just had somebody ask. Okay, thanks, Jeremy.
Now, because it's in the capital improvement projects fund, can those funds be used for things complete, like to fund the senior citizen center? And do that ahead of time? Is that possible?
No.
No, okay.
But we could next year not transfer as much to the capital project fund and use that lack of transfer to fund them, out of the general fund.
That, just as
In other
example.
words, you
But
can
as
take
far as
money
this
out of the
year.
capital fund in another budget year.
Right, just not transfer it
Okay.
there ever.
And it's not, doesn't have to go to similar projects, it can be apples and oranges.
And this next page kind of shows at the bottom of it, if
we transferred in 200,000, which is similar to this year, and usually we transfer in around that. So what you're talking about we would just take from that 200,000 if you wanted. But anyways, if we did transfer 200,000 like previously, we'd have about 350,000 next year to work with if we didn't spend the extra this year. But then this shows a list of projects from all the department heads of different things that they want to see done, and I kind of sectioned it off in that the first yellow numbers are ones that we have done in the past or are normal ones that we see in the capital improvement fund, and then the other in the reddish column is kind of just outside the box ones, not normal ones that we would do, but still capital improvements to consider. And so you can just think on those.
That's the idea. We just thought we'd let you know the possibilities we see for this money. Obviously, there's always more possibilities than there's money, but since we basically emptied it out last year, emptied out a lot of lines that had been there, you're gonna be looking at, kind of a blank capital improvements and things. So, this is what the staff was. I just asked the staff to give us their recommendations, and that's what you're looking at here, as food for thought as we get ready to enter the budget season.
Call him, bury him.
I was looking it up.
What is this for the cemetery?
That was a request of the commission at some point.
Yeah, a long time ago.
So it's always just been in
That's
there. Ron losing it
That's
there.
where you put your urn of ashes. It's got little drawers. They're like an eternal sacred party.
So instead of buying a whole lot for your ashes, we can get a bunch in.
A room or building with niches for funeral urns to be stored.
I saw something pretty neat in
Instead of,
Virginia this year. This last year, we went to a cemetery, and it was like a 200-year-old cemetery. And there's actually a couple presidents that were buried there. And they actually had where you could buy a brick along this walkway, and then your name was put on it, and your ashes were put underneath it. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Hey,
we could do that for
that
sidewalks.
might be less than 13,000.
You can have a sidewalk
A
there.
brick.
Forever.
Sidewalk improvement program.
Forever, everyone will be
They
walking.
mix your ashes with concrete so it doesn't sag.
Maybe then you could sponsor one for someone else.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Sponsor a brick.
For somebody who's not dead yet.
Then back on the subject here, and one other thing, this is the 2017 budget book.
Thank you. And during that whole
Ron's really excited about it.
budget presentation, they were saying how good it was, but your name was never mentioned, and we all know who's takes care of that, so appreciate it.
Well, that's something that one point of emphasis that was made to Lau and I think when we first got on the commission, what was that, 19 what? But anyhow, was what a mess the books were before you came. And I know I've had some other commissioners tell me from the past that, budget meetings were just painful, and literally where they had to do it for hours, for, a day, for about a week, and each year it just keeps getting easier and easier as far as I'm concerned, so a lot of that has to do with you, so we appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is online too. You can look at it there, you, maybe.
No, thanks.
You want my book?
Wait till the movie comes out.
There is a lot of very informative narratives in the opening chapters here along with the business softening out of it, so it's good.
Nighttime reading.
Oh, yeah. How about that?
Anyone else? Okay, at this time, I would entertain a motion for an executive session.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, we request an executive session for purposes of discussing confidential business material information, inviting myself and Ashley for 20 minutes.
I move that we go into executive session for a period of 20 minutes to discuss confidential business material and invite Larry Uri and Ashley Hutchinson.
Second.
So moved by Commissioner Hash and seconded by Commissioner Pounds to move into executive session for a period of 20 minutes to discuss confidential business data, inviting City Manager Uri and Cloud Court Director Ashley Hutchinson. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. It was taken. At this time, I would entertain a motion for adjournment to study session.
I so move.
I'll be glad to report it.
It's been moved. Is there any second?
Second.
So moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Meeting is adjourned. This time we'll enter a study session.
Did they ever vacuum up here?
Do you notice it's only under your spot?
Well, I work.
My gosh, what a mess you got there.
They might want to vacuum up here sometime. I just noticed that. It's really dirty up here.
Just in your spot.
Just in
Yeah,
your spot.
exactly. I'm the only one that. No, never mind.
People wondering where the dirt was.
Yeah.
I worked a summer on the Turnpike's sign crew the year before going into college, and it helped maintain a little focus on my studies.
Well, of course, Lau works in the gardens all the time, but he wears shit kickers when he does that. So.
He cleans
Clean
up.
my shoes off.
I can't work nearly hard enough for. I wouldn't make it a week on Jeremy's crew
I
or
kind of lost track of.
Ron's crew. I'd be like,
Have we announced no action was taken at the study session?
Yes.
all business has
Have
been
we turned
conducted
off-
appropriately at this point, I believe, City Manager Uri.
I was occupied with.
Clearly.
Anyone like a bottle of water?
Yes,
I've got
Please.
some.
please.
I'm fine. There.
This meeting's gone downhill fast.
It doesn't take long.
You should have
Yes,
been
sir.
on your damn phone.
Okay, the subject matter I've asked you to consider tonight at the study session is whether the city should establish a policy, an economic development-oriented policy with respect to the sale of real estate in College Drive Park, which is the area around our flood control project in the south end of Concordia and basically north of Walmart. By dint of the flood control project and having to buy all that land, we came into ownership of probably the only developable land that's presently available near Walmart. And we spent a lot of money to bring that land up to grade and supply it with utilities to make it usable, a project that really just ended last year. Since then, we have had some indications of interest from parties interested in acquiring part of the land, but have not had a firm offer or made a deal on any of the real estate. And as we were considering some of those offers in executive sessions, because as always, these necessarily involve some divulging of the private plans of private businesses, and that's why we have those sessions available to us under the law. It seemed to me that we were proceeding in kind of an ad hoc basis, meaning, okay, here's this situation, so what do we think of this, without thinking about the next person down the road, or having a general policy framework, which is really how municipal governments ought to operate, not in a straitjacket, within something that gives us a sense and our economic development people a sense and prospective buyers a sense of what we are willing to do under various circumstances. As noted in the memo, just to cut to the figures, you see how much money we have in each of these tracts and also what they're presently valued at by the county assessor. Lot 1, this would be, well, just south of Taco John's is a lot owned by MSMT. This is the next one down. That's kind of jointly with them and us. It's valued at $34,780, was in 2016. Price per square foot was $1.35. 2017 valuation has taken that up to fair market value, or to $4.50 a square foot. So you see between 2016 and 2017 a big increase in valuation. That's because we went in there in 2016 and brought that land up to grade. It previously wasn't usable. It was a gully. So now it's all leveled off and you can use it. So that's why the valuation went up on that land.
Well, besides the water utilities and stuff going in there, what did he use to evaluate as far as other property in the area?
Well,
Because it's undeveloped and or anything else.
he probably used other transactions along the highway in history to be a comparable.
Because the county,
What Tim would have had to pay for his, other
And I think that-
sales in the area.
Yeah, other sales in the area as far as per square foot. So that's county assessor's valuation of going value for price in that area right along the highway. And this is one of the right on the highway lots.
So is that based off sales, current,
Yes.
past sales?
Yeah, comparable values,
Comparable
yes.
value-
But it's-
Sales that have taken place.
That's a primary basis. The appraising has comparable values and sale prices and a couple other factors they put in, but basically, yes.
But it's the county appraiser's value,
County appraiser's value.
not the owner's.
We're smoking.
So, and just to address the taxes on that, right now, that land is in the TIF district. And we'll see property tax increase on that land in our next tax statement, but the taxes that are paid will all come into the city's TIF fund through 2020. After the TIF district is over, if we still owned that land, we could put it in our land bank and it would be tax exempt. But since it's in the TIF district, we can't do tax exemption in the TIF district, that's why that works that way. Lot 2, same way. This is the rest of the land that we own in its entirety up on the highway. So if you want to look at land on the highway that's not developed, you basically think in thirds. About a third of it's MSMTs, and south of that is the property that we kind of have jointly with them. Last third where it goes down to a point, we own that entirely our own. The same set of figures, though. A year ago it was valued at 60, now it's valued at 200, $4.85 a square foot. That's because it wasn't usable a year ago. We went in and did all that dirt work, now it's all graded up, so the county appraiser is saying that's what it would be worth at fair market value. Then the other lots 3, 4, and 5 are other lots in the area, but these are not the ones along the highway. These are ones along College Drive, the lower lots, if you will. And what you notice about them is that the county appraiser has not raised the value on those, and they continue to be valued at the same price. Now, you have to kind of break down the tax statements in order to arrive at these figures, because they're kind of joined together in several different tax statements. But this one that says 0, that's a drainage ditch. It would take $200,000 or $300,000 to bring that up to level where it could be used.
yeah, because we'd looked at that at one point and decided, guys, that we would not do
Not
that
worth the
unless
candle
we
to do it.
absolutely needed to.
But if the demand was there, we could close that in and bring that up to level also. So those are the tracks we're talking about dealing with, and there are some significant differences between them. The other cogent point here is those are, the figures you're seeing is what they're worth. That is for a private landowner on the private market. We've all become familiar over the years with the idea that for the city, different considerations are taken. In other words, we don't have to, it's not our job to make money up front off of selling this land and getting the most we can out of it in a private buyer, private seller way. It's our job to use this for economic development purposes, and the city can take the long view on that. It's more important for us to look at property tax receipts as far as City Hall's operations and as far as employment for the community and the investment of the structure itself and having a structure on that property for the community. So on all this lot, my suggestion to you is that we should not be looking at trying to sell it for fair market value. We should be looking at what's in the best interest of the community and how do you weigh that out. would you go up to the top of this memo again for me, please? As I was preparing this memo, I looked at what other cities around the state do and how they approach this. And of course, like everything else you look at, it's all over the lot. But I put the paragraph in there about the city of Lawrence because it seemed representative to me of what I was seeing a lot of in one way or another. The city of Lawrence and its economic development partners have a strong interest in creating primary jobs in the community and will be very aggressive in offering a competitive incentive package for a company bringing significant capital investment and quality job creation to the community. Incentives may include free or reduced land, property tax abatement, industrial revenue bond financing, infrastructure, special assessment waivers, and job training grants. Now, one way or another, we've done pretty much all of those in one flavor or another for various industries and buildings coming into the city. I don't know about job training grants, but everything else we have partaken of one way or another. So I think we need to look at the land around College Drive as an incentive, an opportunity to offer an incentive, and the first thing that Lawrence has in the list of things they're willing to offer is free land or reduced land. So with that thought, I've been discussing this, and before I present it to you, as I do so often about everything, with Ashley and told her kind of what was on my mind, and she looked around and came up with a sample policy that we think can apply pretty well to our community. Would you go to the Marion one here? Just keep going here. On down from that. I added this background material for you. I won't cover this evening, but it just talks about economic incentives in general. I thought it was good video. Up one, please. There we go. Okay. This one is one that one of Ashley's colleagues from the city of Marion gave her for use in Marion Industrial Park. And what it does is talk about how to score out a possible development on attractive city-owned land, which their industrial park would be there, and then to make a decision from there on what kind of incentives or sale prices should be offered for it. For example, employment, if it's a building with 1 to 5 employees, it's 5 points, 6 to 10 employees, 10 points, so forth, 26 or more employees, 20 points on this scoring. Capital expenditures, if you're going to build $100,000 or less, that's a low score. Over $500,000 is their top score. Taxable sales, the same way. The more sales, the more points on this incentive thing. Utility demand, it's an incentive to us if they are using some utilities because we sell those also. And then additional modifiers that they have their local banking lending relationship. That means if they're borrowing the money locally. Majority of capital expenditures from Marion community, that translates to, are they using local contractors? Types of high technology alternative energy industry, that's something we really haven't discussed, and that's more an industrial zone type of requirement than a retail zone like we're talking now, because we're not talking industrial here, we're talking retail or commercial development. And Marion established business expansion, they would give extra points if it's an existing business that's expanding. So maybe the last two apply more to industrial kinds of things than they do to commercial and might be considered. Another thing we could consider is any adjustment in the numbers that needs to be made. But by and large, what we have found, Ashley and I, when we were trying to run some hypotheticals with this, is that these numbers kind of make sense. If you look at a business that's going to come in and put in a more than $1 million building and ring up more than $1 million sales and employ 26 or more people, then if you go down to the scores, you're basically giving them the land. That would get you up to a score. Okay, just to get it a little less quickly, if you hit the highest level on employment, 26 or more employees, on how much you're spending on the facility, 500,000 or more, on taxable sales, $1 million or more, on utility demand, heavy use, just never mind the additional modifiers, you would get into above 65 points. we would be willing to give you the land. It also says waive city utility hookup fees. Well, that would be a couple $100, so that's not really an incentive. I think we need to even throw in there for us. Some cities maybe have a much higher fee, I don't know. But if you were coming in with a smaller deal, let's say you're on the bottom end of the scale. You're gonna have 1 to 5 employees, you're gonna spend $100,000 or less on your building, have $100,000 in taxable sales, light use of utility demand. At that point, if you wanted to buy the land, then we would probably be giving you little or no incentive as far as break on the land price, because we're not seeing much return to the community in terms of employment and in terms of tax revenue, in terms of facilities for that money. So as we just took hypotheticals we could think of the kind that have been under discussion in this community, it seemed to us that this made sense. And I hope Ashley's not back there shaking her head no while I'm saying all this. And we continue to think that. So that's the proposition I am putting on the table to you. I suggest that the city should have a policy that takes into account these factors, and this is as good a set of numbers to work with as I've seen, and that we basically adopt this way of looking at possible offers for our land in the South Development. Now, one other factor here is I've sent you a copy of a letter received from an adjoining landowner, the folks that own the land just south of Taco John, where I said if you divide it up in thirds. They are concerned about the policy being proposed, not with respect to the College Drive property, but only with respect to the land up on Highway 81 where they have adjoining land. Because they're not in this situation. They've invested money in that property, and their total cost requires that they need to get $450 or better out of it to make some money off of it. So they are asking that if we're going to adopt this policy, that it only apply to the land along College Drive and not to the land up on the highway. One way to approach that would be to specifically apply this policy to the land along College Drive and just not say anything one way or another about the land on Highway 81. Not saying we agree that we will only sell it for fair market value, but not saying that it's necessarily going to be applied here or not. I'm not sure what's the best way to do that. I will mention that everything those folks told us about their involvement in the land is true. They took Shady Lake Motel, they did all this. They also received some TIF refunds for that development. When they sold some of the land, they were reimbursed to the extent of the property tax increments they had. Their opportunity to do that again is closing fast. If they were to make the same deal now, they would not get nearly the same amount of tax incentive because there's only 3 more years of TIF district to run. So, you know, they have a concern, but the corresponding concern is cities do these sort of things, and it is city property, and people expect us to get something done with it. So I'm not quite sure what to do about the Highway 81 lots, and my recommendation at this point is a little less certain, or maybe we could put that aside for another day. But on the lower lots down below, I'm a little concerned about further delay because we do see interest picking up. Therefore, I'd suggest that at this point we may want to just consider this property, this policy as concerns the land along College Drive, and maybe leave what to do with the land along Highway 1 for another day.
Actually, what I like about this proposal is, I mean, a city of our size and, well, even the size of Lawrence, the most 2 important things to it right now is people and taxable income. Because without either one of them, you don't have a city. It just keeps going down. So I like the incentives that this brings. And as far as my feelings on using this on 81, I see no reason why we shouldn't. If someone really came and was really interested in the whole thing. And the same way is, okay, that's what the value the county appraiser gave land. Well, I think Chuck made a great statement when he says really it comes down to what the buyer is willing to pay is really sets the value of the land. Because we know there's some closures on 81, the buildings are still empty right now. And so, and this is undeveloped when it comes down to it. And I think the most important thing about this is looking what the city's gonna get long-term. Because, I mean, the survival of the city is the most important thing in this room right now.
Well, and it's a normal piece of development that you get new developments, and then, like you said, you have other areas that might be empty or thinning out in businesses, but that's pretty typical for most towns.
That's true, and a good point about this is it is competition neutral, as we always try to be in economic development. We can't say, we're only gonna have this kind of business, this kind of business, and this kind of business. We need to let the market take care of itself on that.
That's a very good statement. Totally agree with you.
What would be the consequences if this is what was promised? Company comes in and says, yeah, we can do all these things, and we have a total 70 points or whatever, and it doesn't happen.
Normally, when we're dealing with these companies, we deal in terms of, well, you'd have a real estate contract. Sometimes if there's more involved, you'd have a development agreement. And we've had development agreements before that say, where they say, well, we're gonna do this, this, and this, and we say, fine, but you must do it within this period of time, and our participation, our price is conditioned upon you doing all these things. And one way to address that in terms of real estate contracts is say, if you don't have your facility up and running in X period of time, 18 months, 2 years, a year, then we can buy it back from you for what you paid for. So that's one way to address that in these countries. There are some other ways, but that's just an example to deal with that situation. Because what we don't want to do is have somebody just kind of hold it to tie it up. That's our way out of that. You put a finite deadline on how soon they have to enter them.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'd really want to put 2 years. I'd like to see a little bit. I mean, not a whole lot shorter time, but.
I'd say we do that contract by contract and see what's going on, but anyway, there are ways to protect ourselves on that.
But on the other hand, I guess if you get to 70 points, you're investing a heck of a lot of money in.
Yeah, so, and what I'm talking
Better
about,
do
if they sign the contract and, yeah, we'll buy the land, but then they just let it sit and it's 2 years down the road and there it sits. Or another thing that we can put in these contracts, if they turn around and sell the land, so if we give it to them and they sell it for $450, well, we'll take that money, thank you, so
That's a
that
good
they can't sell to
Yeah.
some other property owner, to some other person without reimbursing us for the difference.
So, good real
Well,
estate contract.
and
It goes along with it.
And when these things are being built, I mean, they are a huge boon for the local economy. When they were building the wind farm, we saw a lot of those workers coming through Taco John's. Sam made a good point about with the expansion going on where he used to run up there by Scandia. That as they were putting this together, the people that were coming in were staying at Concordia, right?
Yes.
And eating
Staying
at the
Concordia,
restaurants
eating.
there and probably doing some shopping. And even just the building part of when they're building these things is a really nice boon to the local economy.
If it sounds okay, I can put this in terms of basically take Marion's policy, put it in our policy language and submit it to you as a policy for approval at the next meeting.
And then I'd say frame it and put it up in our discussion room.
There you go.
Yeah.
Just to remind us.
Personally, I have no problem with you doing that.
On all of it or on the College Drive, I don't know.
Just College Drive for now.
I'm torn. I've been pretty, I think, open. Two competing thoughts I have about that, Lyle, is that one, if we're gonna do it, let's just do it. But the other is, it's possible that the size of that lot along 81 would limit the amount of space that a building would occupy, and so you're, in essence, you're going to self-limit that by only generating 40 points as opposed to 65, because you're going to have less of an investment. You're only going to be able to employ X number of people.
But wouldn't highway frontage be worth more than College Drive frontage?
Absolutely it is.
So,
Absolutely
I
it
don't
is.
think we can say the same thing. College Drive is, I think, well,
I think we're already saying that, when we're saying one's value is 485 and the other one's 85 cents. I mean, if you, and then you use the formula on the whole thing, and just values like that. I mean, it's equalizing out on the whole thing.
I think that the land on 81 still has marketable potential as opposed to just rushing to give it away. It's always easy. If we have that as an acceptable, and not putting that into this policy doesn't mean that we can't accept that as a price if we choose to move forward. So I think in what we're doing really is just giving economic development the opportunity to market those westernmost lots to get things started, and still saving the prime real estate as a marketable piece of property, knowing that if a hot dang deal comes through, we can always accept less. It's awfully hard to accept more if our price listed is $0. So in my opinion, that's still a negotiation piece that we could work with, but there's really no reason to state that as a policy when I still view them as being very marketable, especially once we start doing things. If things start moving forward along the College Drive, it's going to make that even more marketable, because there's going to be increased traffic, there's going to be increased sales. It's going to give us a better opportunity. We can always accept less. It's very hard to accept more at that point. So I would think we could look at that more on a case-by-case basis, but let the College Drive lots be within this policy.
Or do we
that
want
moves
to
us
call
forward.
it, instead of a policy, do we want to call it guidelines?
yes.
Because let's say we want to make some adjustments into it because of something else that
I
happens.
don't know, I think you want it as a policy.
I almost wonder if that's a procedural question. If we're going to do this, does it need to be a policy, or can it just
Yeah.
be guidelines? I don't.
Well, our policy could say we adopt the following guidelines.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and okay,
That doesn't open it up to litigation at all, does it,
No.
Mr. Attorney?
I mean, seriously, we have other things
I-
that we can,
Yeah.
you know, so, and we can make it explicit in our policy that, you know, the city may deviate from this at the discretion of the commission, which is always true, because these are your policies, and you can always set them aside.
And the reality is that the money that we're going to make isn't in real estate development, but rather the sales tax, the property tax, the added income, employment. That's where the bulk of a city's revenue is going to come from, and that's, as I said before, where I'm personally conflicted because I grew up in a real estate family. But looking at the best interests of the city, this generates a lot more money from the property value and taxation as opposed to the sale of real estate. It's really pennies on the dollar.
I guess my question would be then, on the frontage property of the highway, what dollar amount do I start with? What dollar amount are you setting on that for me moving forward? Is it 450?
I think, I think you can, I think that you're very gifted in many ways, very talented. I think that there's a way to communicate that this is the starting price, but we currently have a governing body that's very interested in learning more about the opportunities we have for development.
So 450?
I think we should start there.
I mean, here's gonna be the thing, you can bring up 450, but when it comes down to, if the other property on College trades at a lot less, that's gonna be a hard sell. Because people say, what, we're talking a half a block around the corner, and you have that road? I mean, all power to you if you can sell that. But I
What's
think
the
it has to
traffic
come down
count on
to
College
get-
Drive versus the traffic count on 81?
There's no comparison.
Right.
Depends on if you
Depends
count
on
at the,
Walmart. when
yeah,
they're busy.
if you count when they
Walmart
turn
does
into
a lot of
Walmart.
cars up and down there.
I'm just saying, I think,
it's that very first part. People turn.
Yeah. that
I
first
guess what I'm
part, that
saying is,
curve,
I think you
that's
should start at
busy.
450, but we don't want to scare anybody off. I mean, that gives you some, the negotiation.
so in your conversations, would the phone hang up as soon as you said 450? Or would they give you opportunity to add the caveat that there's opportunity for discussion regarding the sort of project that you're interested in?
Yeah, they listed the caveat.
Okay. I think that there's been a significant investment of folks already along 81, and I don't want to miss an opportunity for improvement to the city, but I also think there needs to be some recognition that apparently this land is worth this much, because we do have people who have bought this land at this rate. It's been a number of years since then, but this land at this time did command this rate, and it has the potential to command that again. But I think that I know I am open to hearing opportunities where we can get something in that's gonna be generating revenue.
Right.
Well, okay, so I paid, I think, $4.75 a square foot, and, when I first listed this, oh God, free land, well, why couldn't I get that? But you're not comparing apples to apples. I mean, my purchase was from a landowner, a private landowner, and also it was 9-10 years ago, so the situation has changed. But then as a business owner, I know even if this other land is given free, that it's still increasing the value of the land I did pay for, and that when I'm ready to sell it myself, I'm going to get my money out of it or more, and that any businesses that come in there are going to increase my business.
Right.
Plus, 7-8 years ago, the population in Concordia was greater. So
The
you
economy
had
was
higher
far different.
clientele, and so we've lost that.
Our economy was heading in a different trajectory.
Yeah, it was really peaking up and really doing well at the time. So, I mean, there's a lot of things you gotta look into. You gotta look at what's happening today in reality and what you can get.
Yeah.
And
So
that's why,
I don't have a problem with
And that's
this.
why I'm saying I like a proposal with guidelines, because it's gonna keep changing. And what we don't want is if someone says, well, that's your policy, and all of a sudden say it's gotten better, you say, well, no, we're changing the whole thing. Those are the guidelines, or it's gotten worse. And
In our part of the policy, a step down from the ordinance, so it's not as final as if we were putting it in the ordinance book.
Ashley?
The other thing I'd like you to think about is, what is our price point moving down? Is it that $250 for the College Drive land? So it's considerably, greatly reduced lot, or, full lot price. So what's the full lot price for the College Drive?
Okay, well,
I mean, the big section.
If somebody gets 30 points, what are we?
Right. Somebody gets 31 points.
Well, see, that's the thing we can look at. We stand there, you negotiate price, you get the feel back and forth with them. Then we can say, okay, but if you do this and you have this many people, we can give you this sort of a
But tell me my
discount.
starting point.
Well, what were we going to sell the one for, $1.90?
Well, we started at two, I thought we were gonna start at how much we have in it,
Yeah.
and what is that?
I think 250 is a good amount if
Yeah.
that's close to what we have.
The amount we have in it.
So how much is it?
Yeah, that's a good starting point.
And then the point between could be, well,
And then if it's
50,
scaring people
75%.
away, you need to tell us,
Sure.
and then we can revisit what the policy is.
Sure.
my thought is though, knowing that there's potential for negotiation, if it scares them away immediately, that's probably going to end up better on our end anyway, because they're not as serious about it. But if they're serious about business and they're going to have a conversation, there's going to be opportunity for that dialogue, generally speaking.
we have more in it than that, I can't quite figure it back. When you talk about buying it and bringing it up to grade, bigger water and sewer, you have a lot more.
What do you have any? Would you even venture a guess?
Well, when we bought the land, it was, essentially, we were paying $50,000 an acre for that land along College Drive. Because at that time, that was the only land you could have. When we got an appraisal of the land, when we bought the whole flow control area, the appraiser valued that land along College Drive, and everything east of that, the flood control area and the land along the highway was zero. So we paid basically $50,000 an acre for that land then. We did 2 projects to raise the grade of the property, totaling in all, it's off the top of my head now, between $600,000 and $800,000. And we spent, what, $350,000, $400,000 putting sewer in, we ran the water line. So we have,
That many
14
square
million
feet.
bucks.
Well, yeah, if you throw in the cost of the dam, you know.
Not the dam.
Yeah, but you
just-
can't throw that
Just the
cost.
bringing it up, I didn't put that in there. It's just the cost of buying the land, bringing it up to grade, because none of this land was up to grade. And we did that once, and then that was about $400,000, and then we had to come back and do it again for a big part of the big lot. I really don't want to throw out the numbers off my head like this, but I can tell you it's more than that. So I can bring that back around to you as far as an asking price. Not to say that's not a reasonable asking price. This is the county appraiser's valuation. But I think the county appraiser's valuation on those lots is significantly less than what we have in it.
How many acres do we do, Larry?
9 to 10.
So we'll say 10.
measured out.
So that's 450,000 square feet. At 50,000 an acre. So we've got 500,000 in land. You said you have about 350 in utility.
Yeah, give or take, no.
Sure, not that.
And then about 600,000.
10,000.
About 600,000 in leveling and grading. And that's compacted, engineered, graded land. When people look at this land, they want to see the compaction figures. We have those.
Well, I'm learning the hard way, compaction's really important.
So we've got about 1.5 in it, and we say about, there's about 44,000 square feet per acre, so you say about 45. Okay, I think that there'd be a way to come up with some sort of what we have total dollar
Yeah, I'd
per square
rather than
foot.
throw something out. You know, I've got those numbers, I just don't have them.
Sure, but I think that would give us a pretty good idea and see whether that, okay, let's start there, or that's not reasonable.
Lower appraisal, what the county appraiser, yeah.
Right.
So-
It should be more than the county appraiser.
That doesn't have to be covered by the policy we're talking about now.
I think the other thing though, once you get that figures, I mean, it could be way up there. I mean, you gotta look and say, okay, but what are we gonna generate long-term on it too? Because, or again, we're not looking for short-term.
Well,
Right,
in
right.
Concordia, with respect to commercial development, and I've seen this personally downtown, it's not unusual for a property that has just been improved to be valued by the county appraiser at less than you got in it. Because that reflects the value of downtown lots as they sell. So you can have excellent use value, but you're not gonna be able to flip it.
Sure.
I'm gonna guess you come out somewhere around $325 a square foot,
Well,
which
still
is,
know we're talking about, I'll run the numbers, but that doesn't mean we have to charge that.
No,
And you could
no, it
always
doesn't.
email that. Could you email that information to us, or would you rather give it in a meeting?
Well, we'll definitely come to you in a meeting,
Okay.
anyway, but I can let you know before then. It's all a matter of public record, just not getting it out. As usual, Amber's reminded us, yes, she did do a spreadsheet on this for us not so long ago. So,
236?
so this takes all that into account, yes.
Okay.
This takes,
236.
everything, let me see, 236, lot 3, yeah, lot 3 is the smaller one, and then there's the gully, and then lot 5 is the bigger one. So, bottom line, there's your numbers.
I think that's,
That's a good starting point. 236?
Because thank you very much, Amber. I mean, let me see, we did something similar, that, you may not, we have a newer one than that we did last year. We did 3 separate ones. $16.
I think 235 a square foot's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Well, we may have, I think we may have a a.
Round numbers are better.
one, But,
My
Yeah,
wife went shopping the
236
other day, someone was
sounds weird.
$17.99. Look, it's only $17.
So I buy gas.
It's working.
Gas $2.09.
Right.
And